The train lurched as it rounded the bend outside Fort Worth, and that's when I saw her through the window of the passenger car ahead. A young Comanche woman, maybe 20 years old, pressed against the glass with terror written across her face. A man in an expensive suit had her cornered, his hand gripping her wrist while she struggled. The other passengers looked away, pretending not to see. I didn't think. I just moved. My name's Daniel Cartwright, and I'd spent 3 years as a ranger before deciding ranch life suited me better. But old instincts die hard. I pushed through the connecting door into the next car, the wind and noise of the rails howling between cars, and crossed the swaying space in 4 long strides. "Let her go," I said, my hand resting on the Colt at my hip. The man turned, his face flushed with whiskey and entitlement. "This doesn't concern you, cowboy. I paid good money for this one." The words made my blood run cold. The woman's eyes met mine, dark and desperate, and I saw the bruises on her arms, the torn collar of her simple dress. She'd been someone's prisoner, and this man thought he owned her. I said let her go. He reached for something in his coat, but I was faster. My fist connected with his jaw before he could draw whatever weapon he carried. He crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. The train whistle screamed as we pulled into a small depot, and I grabbed the woman's hand. "Come with me if you want to be free," I said. She hesitated only a second before nodding. We jumped from the slowing train onto the platform, and I pulled her into the crowd of travelers and freight handlers. Behind us, I heard shouting, but we were already disappearing into the chaos of the depot. I had a horse stabled nearby, a sturdy roan I'd ridden into town to pick up supplies. Within minutes, we were mounted and riding hard toward my ranch, 20 miles south. She sat behind me, her arms wrapped around my waist, and I could feel her trembling. When we finally stopped to rest the horse by a creek, she slid down and stood facing me. She was beautiful in a way that made my chest tight, with high cheekbones, long black hair that had come loose from its braid, and eyes that held both strength and vulnerability. "Thank you," she said in perfect English, surprising me. "My name is Ayanna." "Daniel," I managed. "You speak English. The missionaries taught me." She looked away. Before I was taken. Over the next hour, as we let the horse drink and rest, she told me her story. Raiders had attacked her family's camp 6 months ago. Most escaped, but she'd been captured and sold to a trader who dealt in human misery. The man on the train had purchased her in San Antonio, planning to take her to a brothel he owned in Kansas City. "You saved my life," she said softly. "I have no way to repay you." I looked at her standing in the dappled sunlight by the creek, and felt something shift in my chest. "You don't owe me anything." I did what any decent person should do. But even as I said it, I knew I was lying to myself. There was something about Ayanna that had gotten under my skin the moment I'd seen her. Something I couldn't name and couldn't resist. My ranch was modest, just a small house and barn with enough land for cattle and horses. I'd built it myself after leaving the Rangers, needing something that was mine, something peaceful after years of violence. As we approached in the fading light, Ayanna studied it with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You live alone?" she asked. "Yeah, it's not much, but it's home." I showed her to the spare room, gave her clean clothes that had belonged to my sister before she'd married and moved east, and tried not to notice how the simple cotton dress highlighted every curve. She was stunning, and I was acutely aware that we were alone, miles from anyone. Over dinner, she told me more about her life. She'd been educated by missionaries who'd hoped to civilize her people, had learned to read and write, had even helped teach younger children before the raid. She spoke of her family with longing, wondering if they thought she was dead, if she'd ever find them again. "The Comanche reservations are being consolidated," I said carefully. "But I have friends among the Indian agents. We could send word, try to locate your family." Her eyes filled with tears. "You would do that for me?" "Of course." That night, I lay awake in my bed, listening to the sounds of the house settling and knowing Ayanna was just one room away. I told myself I was being noble, protecting her, helping her find her way home. But the truth was more complicated. I was drawn to her in ways that went beyond simple attraction. There was something about her strength, her resilience, the way she'd survived horror and still had kindness in her eyes. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Ayanna insisted on helping with the ranch work, and I discovered she was skilled with horses, could cook better than me, and had a sharp mind for the business side of ranching. We worked side by side, and with each passing day, the air between us grew more charged. She'd brush past me in the kitchen, and I'd catch the scent of sage and wildflowers. I'd show her how to rope a calf, standing behind her to guide her arms, and feel her lean back against me. Our eyes would meet across the dinner table, and conversations would trail off into loaded silence. I knew it was wrong. She was vulnerable, dependent on my protection. Taking advantage of that would make me no better than the men who'd hurt her. But resisting was becoming harder each day. 3 weeks after I'd pulled her from that train, everything changed. A storm rolled in at sunset, violent and sudden. Lightning cracked across the sky, and thunder shook the house. I was checking the horses in the barn when Ayanna appeared, soaked from her dash across the yard. "I was worried about you," she said breathlessly. We stood there in the barn, rain hammering the roof, the smell of wet hay and horse all around us. Water dripped from her hair, her dress clinging to her body. I handed her my jacket, trying to be a gentleman, but when our fingers touched, neither of us pulled away. "Daniel," she whispered, "I know what you're trying to do. Being honorable. Keeping your distance. Ayanna, you've been through hell. You're vulnerable. I won't take advantage of that." She stepped closer. "What if I'm not vulnerable? What if I know exactly what I want? You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I've watched you, Daniel. The way you treat the animals with kindness. The way you've given me freedom and respect when you could have demanded anything. The way you look at me when you think I'm not watching." She reached up and touched my face. "I'm not confused. I'm not grateful. I'm falling in love with you." The words broke something in me. I'd been holding back for so long, trying to do the right thing, but she was right there, looking at me with those dark eyes, and I couldn't resist anymore. I kissed her. The kiss was everything I'd imagined and more. Ayanna responded with a passion that matched my own, her hands tangling in my hair, her body pressing against mine. The storm raged outside, but inside the barn, there was only heat and want and the feeling that this was somehow inevitable. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I rested my forehead against hers. "This is crazy," I said. "Maybe," she agreed. "But it's also right. Don't you feel it?" I did. God help me, I did. We ran through the rain back to the house, laughing like children, and spent the night talking and kissing and discovering each other. I learned the story behind the scar on her shoulder. She traced the bullet wound on my ribs from my ranger days. We shared our fears and dreams and all the broken pieces of ourselves. "I want to stay," she said as dawn light filtered through the window. "Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because this is where I want to be. With you. What about your family? We'll find them. And when we do, I'll introduce you as the man I love. The man who saved me and then gave me the freedom to choose." She kissed me softly. "And I choose you, Daniel Cartwright." The months that followed weren't easy. We faced prejudice from townspeople, threats from men who believed I'd stolen property, and complications with the law since Ayanna was technically still considered missing. But we faced it together. I married her in a simple ceremony with a circuit judge who didn't care about conventions. We found her family on a reservation in Oklahoma, and while the reunion was bittersweet, they saw how happy she was and gave us their blessing. Ayanna's mother even taught me some Comanche traditions, welcoming me into their family. We built a life that honored both our backgrounds. Ayanna wore her traditional clothing on special occasions and taught me her language. I taught her to read legal documents so she could help me expand the ranch. We became partners in every sense of the word. A year after that day on the train, Ayanna gave birth to our daughter. We named her Hope, because that's what we represented, a hope that different worlds could come together, that love could transcend the boundaries society tried to impose. Sometimes I'd watch Ayanna singing to our daughter in Comanche, teaching her the old songs, and marvel at the path that had brought us together. A moment of violence had led to something beautiful. An act of basic human decency had grown into the deepest love I'd ever known. People in town still whispered sometimes, still looked at us sideways. But we'd built something strong enough to withstand their judgment. We had each other, we had our daughter, and we had a future we were creating together, one day at a time. Ayanna would catch me staring and smile, that knowing smile that still made my heart race. "What are you thinking?" she'd ask. That I couldn't resist you, I'd answer honestly. And I'm glad I didn't. She'd laugh and pull me close. "We saved each other, Daniel. That's the truth of it. And it was. I'd pulled her from a train heading toward darkness, but she'd pulled me from a life of loneliness and given me purpose. We'd saved each other, and in doing so, found something neither of us had been looking for but both desperately needed. A love worth fighting for, a home worth building, and a future worth believing in.